What is up? Welcome to the episode. Welcome to the podcast. If you are new, today we're talking about poop. Not number ones, we're talking number twos here. Whenever I hear the words number two, I always think about Austin Powers and Dr. Evil, and I just crack up. Classic flicks. But anywho, there are so many misconceptions around what good digestion and elimination actually is. And the primary reason for this is because so many people have poor digestion and elimination that they've come to believe that what they experience is normal for two reasons. One, they've never experienced anything different. And two, because if they feel comfortable enough to talk about it, the people that they talk to typically have digestion and elimination issues as well. And so they confuse what's common from what's normal. Now, digestion is something that I keep a super close eye on with all of my clients. No matter what their goal is, digestion matters. It is a fundamental part of my work. But why? Why is it so important? We have essential nutrients that our bodies do not manufacture on their own. And therefore, we have to consume them via food in order to meet said nutrient needs. And so just on a super basic level, digestion matters because that's how we fuel our cells with nutrients contained in food. Another big reason why digestion matters is because of inflammation. The two major types of inflammation are acute and systemic. So you can think about acute inflammation like stepping off of a curb and rolling your ankle. Your body senses the damage, and so it swells up and sends all sorts of goodies to your ankle in order to heal it. Folks are really quick nowadays to crush anti-inflammatory drugs to bring down the inflammation, but you actually want inflammation in acute scenarios because that's how the body heals. And so it can actually be counterproductive to take NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like Tylenol, ibuprofen, naproxen, etc. in scenarios like this. Your body knows what it's doing. It's very smart, and oftentimes we just get in the way and literally hinder healing. The second type of inflammation is systemic inflammation, and systemic inflammation is more so whole body related. And so your whole system is somewhat inflamed. And it turns out that systemic inflammation stems from the gut or your stomach, meaning what you eat has the biggest impact on your systemic inflammation levels. And so what are some examples of systemic inflammation? Let's say that you eat something and you get joint pain, bloating, IBS, cramping, swelling, brain fog, skin stuff. So rashes, eczema, psoriasis, KP. Also, all autoimmune conditions have an inflammatory root. And because inflammation originates in the gut, the first whistle stop is addressing your diet. All of these symptoms are a manifestation of an inflamed body via diet. So acute inflammation is more favorable on a short-term basis. However, systemic inflammation is not. Now, digestion also impacts energy levels. No one feels more energetic when they're bloated, constipated, or they're running to the bathroom super frequently. Digestion can even impact sleep because of inflammation, of course, and also more apparently due to things like bloating, abdominal discomfort, constipation, and diarrhea as well. Also, just quality of life. Our digestion plays a massive role in our sense of well-being because if you haven't identified what's causing your digestion issues, you really don't know how you're going to feel after eating a meal. Like, am I going to be bloated? Or is my stomach going to hurt? Or am I going to go to the bathroom tomorrow morning? Or am I going to need to run to the bathroom in 5 minutes? Digestion is a really underappreciated area in terms of health, of course, but also quality of life because for so many folks, it's so unpredictable. I used to be one of those people. I had quote unquote IBS which is really just a formal way of saying that you're eating something or some things that your body doesn't like. That's really it. And fortunately, all of these digestion issues are solvable. I have 100% control over my digestion. It's the best it's been in my entire life, and I've helped countless numbers of my clients resolve their tummy troubles as well. You can have this control too, and we're going to cover how to gain said control in this episode. Vamos! We briefly touched on this before, but what has the biggest impact on our digestion? What we eat and what we drink. Shocker, right? Nothing grinds my gears more than when folks come to me with digestion issues after seeing a gastroenterologist that told them that what they eat doesn't matter and how they're just going to need to rely on drugs for the rest of their lives. First of all, that is absurd and makes zero sense logically, but unfortunately, folks believe these people. And that's like a mechanic telling someone, it doesn't matter if you put gasoline in your tank or windshield wiper fluid. It makes no diff. Obviously it does. What we put in our stomachs impacts our stomachs. It's a crazy concept. In fact, what we put in our stomachs impacts our entire body, hence systemic inflammation. What we eat and drink impacts all of our organs, every single cell, including our brains. Folks often don't think about how what they eat impacts things like cognitive function and emotional regulation, but it does, big time. Now, before we get more specific, I want to relay the most important point of this episode to you right now, and that is to honor your body. Meaning, even if a food is considered quote unquote healthy, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily healthy for you. For example, let's take eggs. Eggs are loaded with nutrients. They're super healthful, generally speaking. But if you eat eggs and they upset your stomach, honor that. Don't think that just because they're under the healthy category, that they can't be an issue for you as an individual on a personal level. And this applies to every single food, including things like vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, anything. Even if you deem it healthy, if you don't digest it well, it's not for you. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's off the table forever, but at least for right now, it's better that you skip it. I've worked with clients and discovered that they've been sensitive to eggs, tomatoes, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, garlic, onions, eggplant, peanuts, almonds, cashews, shellfish, gluten, dairy, coffee, all sorts of things. Now, there are absolutely foods that tend to be an issue for more people than not. However, just because something is more of a rare intolerance doesn't mean that it can't be an intolerance for you. Because if you're that person, you're that person. Okay, now that that's out of the way, poop. What's normal? What's not? Technically anything from going number 2 to 3 times per week, all the way to 2 to 3 times per day. So what may increase it? Eating more food volume is going to increase it. Makes sense, right? Also eating more fiber, because we don't actually digest fiber fully. And that's why it adds quote unquote bulk to our stool. So if your fiber intake is super high, you're probably going to the bathroom more frequently and or your stool is going to have more volume to it. On the other hand, if you're not eating very much fiber and or you're eating fairly low food volume, you're probably going to go number 2 less frequently. And when you do go, there is going to be less total stool. Now, fiber can be a tricky one because for some folks, fiber improves their digestion, and for other folks, it actually makes it worse. Personally, my digestion is far better with less fiber in my diet. And I know that that might sound crazy, but fiber is not an essential nutrient, despite what some folks might tell you. Meaning more fiber is not always the answer. More fiber is not always better for everyone. For some people, it actually backs them up. For others, it upsets their stomachs and bloats them and makes them gassy. Some folks literally eat close to 0 grams of fiber per day and have incredible digestion and elimination. There is no one size fits all in terms of fiber. Specifically in regards to constipation, people are just like, oh, you're constipated? Eat more fiber. And this can often actually make constipation even worse. Folks with constipation usually have far better outcomes by not increasing fiber, but by actually decreasing fiber. I know that sounds wild, but it's true. The science backs it up, and so does my experience with clients. As a general rule, folks that eat more veggies, fruit, and basically carbohydrates are going to have more stool volume, and folks that eat less veggies, fruit, and carbs are going to have less stool volume. Neither one is better than the other necessarily, but rather the priority is your digestion as an individual. So whatever eating pattern that results in the best digestion for you is the best fit. Now, as far as your stool specifically, I attached something called the Bristol stool chart in the description below, and this has 7 general types with picture examples of what you want your stool to look like. So everything from type 1, which is severe constipation, to type 7, which is severe diarrhea. As you'll see, type 3 or 4 is what we're after. That is the goal. That is a classic sign of good digestion and elimination. And without getting too graphic here, you want your bathroom trips to feel and appear more or less like soft serve ice cream, okay? It shouldn't be a struggle. You shouldn't have to breathe through it or strain in the slightest. You shouldn't need to run to the bathroom because you can't hold it either. It shouldn't just come out of you involuntarily. And interestingly enough, it shouldn't actually smell that bad. And if it does, it's a sign of poor nutrition. Stool isn't meant to smell all that bad. The better your diet is, the less it will smell. For example, if you hit the bathroom, you should be able to go in there less than 5 minutes later and not even know whether you went number 1 or number 2. That is normal. It's not as common as we'd hope. However, that is the default state for good digestion and elimination. Everyone can achieve this, even folks with IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, diverticulosis, etc. So now that we know what good digestion is, how do we get there? First of all, I have never recommended food sensitivity testing to any one of my clients because the accuracy of said testing just isn't there. So here's what we do instead. We implement a food diary and track everything that they're eating and drinking, and next to each meal, we simply write how we felt digestion-wise within 30 minutes of that meal. We also track bathroom trips, generally speaking, and how they feel as a whole. Then, I look at their food diary along with their digestive symptoms and pattern recognize what may be causing the issues. We implement changes, continue to track, and we figure out exactly what food or foods are causing the problems. Can it be tedious? A little. But the question is, do you want good digestion or not, right? Now, you may not want to get this granular, and that's okay. It's completely your choice. However, this is not only the most effective method, but it's essentially the only method that works, practically speaking, in the real world. Now, to give you a head start, what are some of the most common intolerances? What should you keep an eye out for? First and foremost, dairy. At least 2/3 of the population do not have the ability to digest dairy as an adult. Simple as that. Personally, dairy flares up my autoimmune arthritis like crazy. I do still consume it from time to time if I really feel like a pizza or something, but it's super rare simply because the joint pain and stiffness that I experience just isn't worth it to me. However, your symptoms may be less pronounced or even similar after consuming dairy-rich foods, and you may still choose to eat them regularly. That's your call. It is causing damage, of course. However, the payoff of eating delicious dairy-containing foods may be worth the cost, i.e., inflammation and whatever symptoms you experience. The second biggest intolerance that I see is gluten, and I think a lot of folks are aware of gluten these days. We've got celiac disease, of course. These folks get crushed by eating gluten. And then we've also got gluten sensitivity. And this can manifest as things like joint pain, brain fog, digestion troubles, skin issues, bloating, IBS-like symptoms, and the list goes on. High FODMAP foods often also cause troubles for people, and funny enough, dairy and wheat-based products are high in FODMAPs, along with things like beans and lentils, certain veggies and fruits, onions, garlic. So again, just because it's a food that is deemed healthy doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. So this is the process. Eat foods, pay attention to how your digestion is impacted, make adjustments if need be, and retest. Also, something that I've been examining a lot over the last decade of working with my clients, and even more so over the last 2 to 3 years, is the digestion and mental health connection. For example, when my clients eat funky foods that throw off their digestion, they are much more likely to feel feelings of depression and angst. I've also noticed this firsthand in myself, and it seems as though feelings of depression and anxiousness may actually just be inflammation in the brain via what we are eating and drinking. And one of the key questions around this is the primary driver of things like depression and anxiety actually what we're eating and drinking, as opposed to outside circumstances, situations, experiences, or some sort of personal flaw that we believe ourselves to have? Because what do humans tend to do when they feel uncomfortable emotions? We alter our state. We eat funky foods, we drink booze and or consume other drugs, and it begs the question, what is coming first? Like, would we be able to shake feelings of angst and depression much, much faster if we simply stayed on track nutrition-wise and chose not to consume alcohol and other drugs? It's sort of like a chicken or the egg question. I put a podcast together recently explaining what leaky gut is, and if you haven't listened to it, I would highly recommend doing so, especially being that you're listening to this episode, because digestion is clearly something that you're interested in. And I'm also planning on putting an episode together on something called leaky brain, because it seems that whenever we have leaky gut at play, or essentially digestion issues, we also have an increased likelihood for inflammation in the brain, because the gut is often referred to as the second brain. Your brain and your gut are inextricably linked. And this is why what we eat heavily impacts how we feel, how we think, and what emotions we experience. It's almost as if depression and anxiety are autoimmune conditions. I'm beginning to think about them this way more and more nowadays. It's really, really fascinating stuff. For example, I've had clients that have been able to clear up their depression and angst by changing their diet. This is really powerful stuff. I'm actually hearing more and more stories about folks resolving things like bipolar disorder via diet. There's one woman specifically that I may get on the pod to talk about this because she's a brilliant person and it's just such interesting stuff. So to sum things up, first and foremost, honor your body. And if you're keen on clearing up your digestion and elimination, implement the steps that I laid out via the food diary, pattern recognizing, and retesting. And just know that at one point, I believed that I was going to experience digestion troubles for the rest of my life. And fortunately, it doesn't have to be that way. I've had clients that have thought the same thing, and they're just shocked when a week into their program, in some instances, they have zero bloating and their bathroom trips are better than ever. You can have this too. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. On Instagram, I'm at N1Fitness. On TikTok, I'm at the N1Fitness. And on YouTube, I'm at Marcus Sadu. Feel free to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform, if you'd like, of course. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya!